Well, thanks very much indeed, Masejo. So let's get straight into business. It's been a long time with the elections overshadowing most of the other news content. One of the big things that it did eclipse was this huge announcement coming out of the UN climate conference last week, the 131 billion rand secured by South Africa, loans in forms of cheap grants as well coming out from the wealthier nations to help the country move away from its reliance on coal. So South Africa is securing a 130 billion rand funds to develop clean energy sources. The money will come from wealthier nations, as I said, over a period of 3 to 5 years. In various forms, it includes grants. Now, this raises questions as to how the money will be used and whether or not there would be implications for jobs. But it will help Eskom with funds to, as I said, repurpose the coal-fired power stations, and those are due for decommissioning over the next 15 years. So let's get some response now from the major trade union federation, Cosatu. Matthew Parks joins me. Matthew, thanks very much indeed for your time. So South Africa has to make what it calls this just transition to protect vulnerable workers in the coal industry. What is Cosatu's initial response to our country securing these funds?
No, we're quite pleased as Cosatu. There's been a lot of discussions between government, business, Eskom and Labour. Cosatu, including our affiliate NUM and other unions, have some initial discussions on it, so we're quite pleased. The economies are changing across the world. The energy makeup is changing across the world. Our fundamental point as Cosatu is that no worker, especially in the coal industry, be it in mining, be it in energy, all those communities and towns in Mpumalanga which depend upon the coal sector should be left behind. We are an economy with 44% unemployment rate. We have lost 500,000 jobs in the mining sector since the 1980s. So for us, what's fundamental is to protect workers whose jobs are at risk, to look at to skilling them, to make sure there's alternative employment. But the bottom line is no worker should be left behind, no community should be left behind. So this money is quite critical because Eskom doesn't have the money to invest in new generation capacity. A third of Eskom's generation capacity comes off grid in this decade. So where will they get the money from? And of course, we all know, as the news announcement a few seconds ago said, we're having load shedding left, right, and centre. So we need new energy generation capacity to be brought on grid as soon as possible. This is going to help it. Eskom also has an unsustainable debt burden level of 400 billion rand. So this will also assist in that regard as well. So it really is quite critical. But for us as Cosatu, we'll be engaging with government, with Eskom throughout this process. Our affiliate NUM, which has done excellent work in this sector, will be part of that to make sure that indeed this is a just transition and that coal and energy workers, mine workers will be protected, and those affected communities in Mpumalanga would have economic opportunities created for them, because often you see good plans announced by the developed world that we're going to assist Africa, then afterwards nothing happens. So for us, this is a first step, but it's going to be part of a process, and we must make sure workers and communities are taken on board, are protected.
And that consultation, Matthew, is extremely important. You speak about towns and economies in Mpumalanga, for instance, revolving around these aging power stations. Now, you've mentioned Cosatu, together with the NUM, in those discussions to decide where Eskom's priorities should lie. What should the strategy be from this point forward when we talk about how to operationalize that money coming in?
Sure. The immediate point forward is that we have 3 power stations, Hendrina, Komati, Grootfontein, coming off grid in the next 2, 3, 4 years. There is some just transition plans on the table from Eskom, progressive plans, which actually can create more jobs. So we need to action those as quickly as possible. Because we know in South Africa, we are great at plans, but we're very poor at implementation. So I think for us, we simply do not have the luxury of time. We need to move with speed. You don't need to wait for a power station to close to look at creating new economic opportunities. We are pleased that Eskom has committed not to retrench a single worker. But look, we have an unemployment rate of 44%. And in these small little towns, Hendrina and so forth, there is little economic life outside of these plants. So we need to move with speed. We need to make sure this money does arrive. There are no delays. We also need to look at new economic opportunities. Renewable energy is a growth sector. It is the future of energy in many regards. But we're importing the technology from China, from other countries. We need to set up factories in these towns to build solar panels, to build the wind turbines locally. This can create opportunities to exceed our climate change targets as South Africa, but also to create export opportunities for us to the rest of the region, to the rest of the continent. We shouldn't be having to import simple technology like a solar panel from overseas.
And if I could just come in there, Matthew, just very quickly, because we're running out of time. I mean, Cosatu says this morning that Eskom should be the owner of that generation capacity, and presumably that's exactly what you mean. That really, you know, when it comes to these projects, Eskom should be in the front line.
Exactly. They have to get in the space, not simply to procure renewable energy from independent power producers. Eskom itself should own renewable energy stations. There's no reason why they shouldn't. We should also look at, and this is something that NUM has long championed, for workers and for communities themselves to own renewable energy generation capacity. This is the opportunity for us to do that. There are huge moments for us to do so. We shouldn't allow this window to pass us by. And look, the bottom line is also that the economy is bleeding. Every day of load shedding costs the economy about 13 billion rand. It hits mining. It threatens the survival of mining industry and those jobs. It hits manufacturing, it hits agriculture, financial services, the entire economy. So we cannot continue to limp for another 15 years with continuous load shedding. We have to deal with it. Government also has to assist Eskom to get back into its feet. We need to assist Eskom to plug the holes from corruption, from wasteful expenditure, etc. There are many opportunities, and they are positive ones if we take them seriously, if we move with speed, if we ensure that workers are taken on board.
Okay, I'm going to have to leave it there because of time, Matthew. Time's against us, my apologies. But certainly the point of what he's trying to say there on behalf of Cosatu and Labour, with this new money coming in, 131 billion rand secured at that climate